far away. That's the range of the guns which are involved. And this particular photograph is related to that famous 155 Bofors gun. Okay, but this is only one. There are many more varieties of guns with the field artillery. Many of them of Russian origin, many of them, some of them of Indian origin, a wide variety of them, of various vintages. Now, this particular field artillery have a problem, which I will explain a little later, related to being forced to do a firing at a target which they don't see. In other words, effectively, somebody tells them their reconnaissance parties and all that, and so place there is an enemy activity, there is a potential target, and somebody takes a decision, you have to hit them. They know where they are, and there is a report about where the target is, now you have to hit, and you don't see. So, what is the issue with that? I will just come to. The particular system was to help them in that particular aspect of more effectively doing this particular combat using them. Command and control system is nothing but effectively an information system. That means about information about yours, your guns, where are they, and how much ammunition you have, whatever the things about yourself. And your other assets other than artillery are also in the same battlefield, and you don't want to end up hitting them by mistake. So, about them. So, these are all related to what they call operational information. Then, whole lot of information related to the enemy gathered over time called intelligence about the enemy locations and their activities, their plans and things like that. And then a whole lot of decision making to be done. Is there a threat? Should we prevent any further advance of the threat by neutralizing or hitting, or maybe we want to go and attack and we have to keep the enemy occupied by firing shells at them, as it is happening across the border these days, so that they are kept pinned down. In the meanwhile, our fellows go and do the attacking and capturing and all that. So, these type of a thing ultimately are information system which ultimately help in decision making. Once the decisions are made, orders are given, and this has to be executed by the very same gun and the gun crew and all that. So, broadly this system is of that nature. Now, the main concern here is how to get rid of this thing which is blocking off the slide. Okay. Right. So, main concern here is, as I said, because these guns are firing and you don't know where the target is, type of a thing. This is a very deep technical issue. There is no easy solution to that. If the guns were firing in vacuum, some of you who are, you remember your mathematics and all that, you can solve a couple of differential equations and find a solution. But unfortunately, these don't fire in vacuum. So, the trajectory they follow is not neat. In vacuum, it would have been a parabola, and parabola is something which you can computationally solve. So, the particular trajectory gets affected by the weather, at what altitude you are, and the air pressure thereof, and then whether there is a wind blowing, 100 things. To overcome that, every supplier of gun provides a Bible, a book of tables, where he has done firing under controlled conditions at sea level, raised by rail, planes and all that, and found that if I set my barrel at this angle, and if I put a particular charge and then fire a particular shell with so much of thrust, it has gone that much of distance. Okay, like that for every little different angle, for every different, different quantities of masala, what we call charge put into that, what is the range you are able to get and all that is tabulated. And these tables are made available as available to the gun crew. Poor chaps, when they get a hukum that go hit that particular target, now they have a map which they put on a drawing board, put a tracing paper on that, start looking at this, I am here, I am there, this is the distance I want, for that distance, how much to put and all that. For all his efforts, he ends up, when he actually fires as per the data, as a fairly inaccurate. That means it doesn't go on the target, it goes overshoots, it is an undershot. To help him to take control of that, they also set up what you can see in the top right hand corner, I don't know whether you can see at the back, what is called a forward observation post. Somebody, an advanced party who is a little closer to the target is able to see, at least with the help of binoculars and night vision goggles and all that, he says that what you had fired last time is overshot. Now these fellows do a little correction according to that. If it overshot, maybe I'll slightly tilt the gun down or something like that, try my luck again. Now this time he undershoots, is so reported. This trial and error goes on about 4, 5, 6 times before some reasonable accuracy and effective firing happens. Now this is the context, and when we were asked to do a command control system capturing that, all they expected was this book has to go into the computer so that this lookup table can be made use of. Somehow it didn't sound right. I mean, modern Zamana, what is this crude thing going on? So, as first level of innovation, we, I and my team engaged another system laboratory called ARDE, Armament Research and Development Establishment, who are the designers of guns and who are also equally guilty of giving all these books. So we said, why can we not do anything better? After some discussion, it turned out that it should be possible in the modern context with powerful processors in real time. You can actually predict the trajectory of the cell, including all this wind and everything. It should be possible to predict it. So if we can do that, you see the advantage these people get. He feeds in his location, he feeds the target location, press a button, it says this angle, this much of charge, fire. So it looked very appealing, and then we did some sort of a test setup with a portable computer and all, and put all this algorithm, took it to the field. The users were skeptical because for decades together they have been trained to do this, and now we are trying to say some other thing, some computer is going to tell me how to fire. So, but then fortunately there are also people who are willing to try out and all that. They were amazed at the type of accuracy they got in that. All the dream of a typical artillery officer or the staff is to have what they call first salvo effectiveness. Moment of fire, you should hit the target. This is a nirvana for them. Why otherwise, what they were doing, there were a lot of problems. A, they are wasting a lot of ammunition. They are wasting a lot of time. Not only that, this trial and error firing, it's some sort of an alert to the enemy that something is going on. They will either get into some protection mode, or they may counter fire and then neutralize you. So this fear was already there, always there. If you are able to get and hit them at the first instant, nothing like it. So this particular thing looked so promising. They went along. In fact, this particular approach caused the project about a year and a half or 2 years. But with hindsight, and which the users also say, it was a time well spent. If it were just putting the table, we would have just moved on very quickly. So this is one innovation that was done. I will give the overall context. When I talked about an automation system, actually it is a distributed computer network which is giving a decision support capability to the officers and staff. So right at the forward edge, as I was telling, there would be what is called a forward observation post. And then behind, typically in a slightly sheltered, because you don't want to be seen, you don't want to be hit, maybe in a depression or behind a hill, would be deployed our own guns. And associated with each gun of this nature, we had designed and provided a display device. So that particular puzzle about what you should do to the gun, how to orientate, what they call azimuth, in which direction you should point, how much of elevation, how much of charge, everything was given as a display for the fellow to do without thinking. So that was done. A set of 6 guns would be called a battery. Now the computation which you had to be done, real-time computation, for a set of 6 guns would be done by one computer. So that particular thing is called a battery command post, and typically you can see there is a vehicle in which some people are sitting and operating some computer. That's where that would happen. And then computation done, press button, all the displays will glow, each gun at, how they should do the firing. So this is a tremendous innovation. This, all this computer display would have happened anyway, but then it would happen crudely by mimicking the manual process. This is a total revamp of the whole thing because of that trajectory computation. Then the observation post were typically using a walkie-talkie type radio to tell that overshot, undershot, anything, enemy action and all those things. So we gave a small terminal to them, data terminal, and they would simply key in the data, and then instantaneously it would get registered wherever it has to go and get registered. More importantly, for a set of batteries, 6 guns, maybe 3, 4 clusters like that, there is a higher command post where it takes a overall decision that what our enemy is doing, who should we should attack or not, or should wait, and all those things is not left to the fellow who is having the gun. It is something which is an order which is given from the top. So all communication would ultimately have to reach there. So in an extreme case, from the observation post to this particular decision-making center, distance may be 30, 40 kilometers. So a lot of issues are there about how to communicate using these walkie-talkie radios and things like that. We will solve them as we went along. Not all of them I am going to highlight. But at that particular command post, we ended up making a computer center of sorts, carried on a vehicle with a computer, then a communication control, because the hub of all communication is there, a communication control center and a display terminal and things like that. Now this display terminal, I don't know whether you can see some orange patch there. Within the thing is another innovative thing, in the sense that earlier the way the people were operating was to use a paper map in the form of large sheets, and then because that is very precious, it should not get torn in the wind and all, it would be put on a drawing board, pinned so that it is secure. But then you don't want to spoil it, so you stick tracing paper over that, so that anything you want to write, you write on that, not on the map. And then this particular thing, you use the tracing paper 2-3 times, you keep rubbing, you don't know what you have written, what you have not. Anyway, that's beside the point. And that was a mechanism under which lot of assessment of the distances and things like that, where am I, and all those things. Now we wanted that to come over here. Those days we didn't have all these fancy large screens with high resolution, nothing. I'm now talking about mid-80s, around that time. So the best we could do, we did a survey and one innovative product, something called a plasma display. It was available in large sizes, fairly low resolution, but transparent. It is like glass. So what we did was, we gave a drawer, so to say. This paper map could be showed behind that the display panel, and the display panel, whatever you would have put on the tracing paper, is automatically getting generated on the plan. So it looks, it is superimposed on the map. So it made so much of difference to that. So like that, lot of innovations went into each one of those elements there. So I'll summarize. I talked about the lookup tables and how we moved to actual computation of the trajectory. This is another interesting thing. I talked about walkie-talkie radios. Walkie-talkie gives the impression to you they are all modern radios. In fact, many of them are the Second World War vintage. Okay, so those radios were absolutely designed only for voice. Hello, hello, how are you, and all that type of a thing. Now, what we wanted was a computer communication, so we wanted to send data across. Now, when we wanted to introduce new radios, that is alarming, because it means cost and procurement time, and what do you do with the radios which you already have? So we took it as a challenge, and then using their existing legacy radios, legacy, as I said, running back to World War II radios, we gave an interface where the same radios would do a data transmission for this particular purpose, without preventing them for using it for voice also. So that made, again, I think a lot of this thing saved a lot of money and time and all that. Then this is essentially a software-intensive system. Computation is related to software. Then I talked about command control. Basically, somebody takes high-level representation, gives orders, and all that is also software-oriented work. For that, you should understand their business logic. Field artillery, I mean, they talk their own language, they have got their own system, they have got their own training, and here we are scientists, excuse me, I want to do software. How do you go, where do you start? So one of the things we did was including myself, we requested them and became their students. We went to their colleges, attended their classes, we went to the field locations, saw in what context they are doing the fighting and all that. And then started getting an idea so that we could intelligently read their existing manuals and book training manuals and reports and things like that. So that was a very useful and important step. In fact, as the project went along, there was a General Rodrigues who ultimately became, I think, governor of Goa and other places. And he was the vice chief of army staff who was steering this project. One day he looked at here and said, I'm thinking of giving an honorary brigadier, something like that. So because we started talking their language, that's extremely important. When we talk to, I mean, when you are trying to do something scientist-oriented work towards a particular user community, talking his language, I mean, using his terminology makes so much of difference about the comfort and then hand-holding that emerges out of that. As far as software development is concerned, those were the days where the waterfall model was very popular. I think some of you might have, where we freeze the requirement, sign it off, and then give it for the design and implementation. and as if there's God's own truth type of a thing. Fortunately for us, we could adapt that because this artillery knowledge is decades old, and the training is so rigorous. The manuals are so explicit, and everybody does the same thing, same way. So there is no if and but and all that. All we have to do is capture that and make it into software using that model. I will give a later a case where that luxury was not there. But interesting thing is, again, that innovation type of a thing. When we were doing this software, the software engineering as a discipline was coming up. I am now talking, as I told you, the middle 80s type of a thing. And the first few tools for doing that software development by this software engineering methodology called CASE tools, computer-aided software engineering tools, were announced, and I believe we were the first to get those tools in India and use them, not just get them, but use them. So that was another innovation that absolutely streamlined our entire discourse with the users and ratification of the requirements and freezing and things like that. So on, I think there are others which I will, I think not go into everything. Some of them I touched and all already. I think this third bullet here, that partly talking their language, partly showing a serious commitment, bringing on board, making them your partners. Initially they were skeptical. In fact, a brigadier who was in charge of their corresponding team with me, he said, don't mistake me, can I ask you a question? I said, yes, what is it? He says, if you have never driven a car, let alone, have never seen a car, let alone drive a car, how do you think you can build a motor car? I said, it is a good point, but if you are with me, why build a motor car? I can do much more than this thing. So you hold my hand, we will be together, we will do. Alone I can't do, I told him. And as I said, with level of skepticism like that, as we went along, absolutely they were partners in this whole game. So there were absolute total enthusiasm, particularly that accurate fire made all the difference. Otherwise, Bhai-bandi will take you only that far. So with the result, the users immediately, after that first set of trials, they placed an order for a limited series production at their cost with Bharat Electronics, and that particular interface to Bharat Electronics, I think I will touch upon. But broadly, even as whatever I am talking about various elements in the vehicle and things like that, we made Bharat Electronics do the fabrication of those elements even at the R&D stage. So with the result, when the limited series production order had to be given, all the items which need to be produced and made for that enough to field in 6 regiments, they were able to take off without that so-called TOT. I will come to the TOT aspect a little later. And then even that was successful, and then there was a full-fledged order of 1,200 crore plus, which was placed on Bharat Electronics. That was the single largest order BL had got at that time. Subsequently, of course, everything has become costly, so to say. So for all this, the R&D investment, the project for which I was a great guy leading, was just about a little less than 1 crore. Not only that, it also did one other thing. This particular information system working in the battlefield ultimately spawned into a whole class of systems called C4I systems: command, control, communication, computer, intelligence systems. And even today, to DRDO, but more importantly to BEL, that is a major segment of business, which got opened by this particular development and work. After our primary development was over, and then it transited into limited series production and a full-fledged production run, the R&D and innovation didn't stop, because we are always apprehensive that in a computer game, the technology is perishable. What you have done a cute thing now, or 2 years later, people will laugh at you. Now, how to make sure that anything that is done is current at that particular point in time, if not a little bit future-proof, so to say. So to that extent, every transition from R&D stage to the limited series production stage to the final production, which we called Shakti. You can see that, for example, this was the gun display unit which we put at every gun, which I had shown in that earlier diagram. It was looking like this. It was engineered totally and then made into this, and then it underwent with lot more data displayed and all that, and a sophisticated model by the time full production happened. More importantly, we had half a dozen different terminals, something with the observation post, then there is a different computer at the battery command post, which is doing the trajectory computation. But as the Moore's law took effect and the computers became more and more powerful, there was really no need to have these different types of devices. So ultimately, everything collapsed into initially more compact, by the time full production, a common terminal doing all the jobs. So that their inventory became much simpler, training became much simpler, and things like that. Then I talked about that particular magic dabba where I was pushing the map behind and all that. Unfortunately, that innovation had a very, what shall I say, it died. The natural death, by the time it moved to the next stage, the better displays were available. We were able to completely revamp. In fact, we upgraded this particular common terminal to even do that job of display of all the targets and things like that, MS map ground with a JAS, digital map, everything happened in one terminal. But the initial innovation to encourage the user that this is something they have to believe in and it is going to help them, and their conviction thereof, they were also with us in riding the technology curve, and final order was placed for this particular compact system. Now I will switch gears. Now to have another 10 minutes or 12 minutes, or it's too early? Okay, fine, I'll try to. Sometimes I feel when you start talking, the audience is your captive. So in case somewhere you can raise a hand, I will quickly.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In this present scenario, when you have to innovate and there is no system developed, and then you have to convince the customer to accept the things of the armed forces, how do you set the timelines that my project has to be completed in a year or two or something like that?
Absolutely, very good question. One is you asked about time factor. One is about the gut feeling of the technologist. He is worried about so many things that go wrong, and he would like to build a cushion and give a time frame. That would be unacceptable to the user, obviously. You say, that suppose this system, I are told I need 15 years. My gut feeling is about 10, 12 years. Let me put a cushion and give 15 years, it won't be. So basically, there is an element of what is in management called a political PDC. That means somewhere he is expecting in a matter of 3, 4 years, and I feel it is about 10 years plus. Somewhere we initially agree for some intermediate time with lot of misgivings. Very often what happens, as we start working, momentum picks up, new technologies which were not known come to your rescue, and then somehow all our sins are pardoned. But it is absolutely tough. Every project I have faced this exactly same problem, and I remember the next project I am going to talk about, the user was saying, if I want to give it to me in 2.5 years. I was saying nothing less than 6 years, 6.5 years. So it was a stalemate for nearly 6 months. Dr. Kalam was the SA at that time, and he heard about it, he called, and then he asked them, then he said, take 4.5 years. I mean, that's how the time frame came to me. I mean, absolutely thrust down the throat. The boss says 4.5 years, 4.5 years it is. So as it happened, it did take 6 years. But then by then the users were so actively involved that it helps. But all the things, criticism you see in the paper, saying that time over and all that, many of them are related to fairly unrealistic things forced on the technology people. Many of them. So we have our share of misdeeds and things like that.
So one small clarification. Sir. Hello, sir. One small clarification. This
There are
innovative target, this computerized target system. This was in place when Kargil war took place. This system was in place when Kargil took place.
walk around. Yeah. Yeah, shall I move to the next? This is when we did that artillery combat command and control system. As I said, that is the first information system which was taken to the battlefield. And there are a lot of issues about taking information system in battlefield. I will not go into that. But that particular thing sparked interest in the users. And in any case, there was a development all over the world where increasingly the computers and networks were going to the battlefield. And they wanted that particular scale to extend to the entire Indian Army in the battlefield. In particular, the fighting arms who call the shots are the infantry and the armored. Infantry are the actual fellows with the gun who ultimately go into a one-to-one attack and then occupy or repel, whatever it is. And armored are the tank people. So these are the people, they realize the value of that. Only thing is, again, that particular doubt started coming. Can Indians do it? Not about DRDO. Can India do it? So I used to keep telling, by then the IT, we had made a name. If we can be IT providers the whole world, why we can't do this? But they were not convinced. So they went on a deputation to see the systems all over the world, to other armies and other defense industries and things like that. MOD asked me to go with them. They didn't want me to come, but MOD asked me to go with them. So we went and took a rational view of the whole thing. Interestingly, when they came back, they said, no, it should be done in India. The reason was that everywhere we went, the respective countries had got bogged down about the fast technological obsolescence. They do something, field it. In the meanwhile, that computer is obsolete, spares are not available, operating system version has changed, so you have to go back to drawing board. So these people started worrying that if you get that type of a thing, because procurement you do once, and then by the time it lands here, it is obsolete. Who is going to hold the ranks? So they were a little nervous. Second thing is, it was very quickly realized that giving a at the forward edge of the battle, the command information decision system in software form means you have to share all your operational knowledge and information and logic to foreigners, which would be absolutely impermissible because they are very sensitive. What tactics you would apply under what condition and all, you don't give away like that. So the problem was solved, and then we came back and said it should be done in India. Still there was a skepticism, this DRDO, I don't know how long they will take and all that. After all, this IT system will go to IT industry. So they went around and then they gave a pilot project, and the cost of the pilot project and the conditions which the private companies put, I don't know tell which and all that, scared the hell out of them, saying that at this rate we simply can't afford, we have to sell our whole Indian army to buy those IT systems. And ultimately, reluctantly, they came to DRDO and then said, can you do it for us? And we are foolish enough to jump into everything. Whenever somebody says, can you do this challenge, we say yes. Sometimes the challenge, we say yes. Anyway, we took on. So the answer for that is that the services did want to look elsewhere, but they realized the value of doing it in-house. And they did it very wisely, as you can make out. But before we go further, so this particular system essentially is a distributed computing network across the battlefield. And in the fighting tactical area, there is a concept of hierarchy. The highest hierarchy level where a Major General, Lieutenant General presides is called the corps headquarters. Then there is a set of divisions. Each division has brigades, under each brigade is battalions. So typical hierarchical structure is there. And every node, you would require a computer center. Essentially it is that. Over and above that, all the commanders and the staff officers will be requiring terminals to interact with the computers. So some sort of a client-server architecture of a distributed nature. So for example, this particular initial development was supposed to be done in the Rajasthan sector, and Sri Ganganagar was where the corps headquarters and one of the div headquarters was there. And then the Abohar, Lalgarh, and all these places we were supposed to deploy in the field. Sometimes in a tent, sometimes in a vehicle. At corps headquarters, you would have the luxury of some sheltered accommodation. So when we took a count, it turned out to be, it will be a network of as many as about 119 servers, some 82 workstations, and maybe 234 comparatively low-end client PCs, laptop computers, whatnot. So fairly massive system. Now here, as in the case of artillery, in fact much more so, was to capture the business logic. That is basically to freeze the requirement. Very soon we realized that we can't freeze it. Because much of the logic, unlike in the case of artillery where there are books and training manuals and all that, we are in the head of the commander. And they are very proud about it. Given a thing, I will solve. Now, point is, two generals don't agree how to solve a given problem. So, this particular thing became a huge problem. How to capture the requirement and keep it versatile enough to satisfy the requirement of the generals. Generals would say, which is this computer telling me how I should do a battle? So, we are stuck in the beginning itself. There is a no, it's only a decision aid, decision support system. But it took some convincing. So, this is the type of problem right at the beginning. Secondly, the massive scale of the software, huge software. Even if I had pooled all the software engineers of DRDO, we wouldn't have been able to manage it effectively. So, there was no option but to work with the IT industry in a big way. Now, I told you about the experience about IT industry. Now, how do you bring this marriage? So, that is where this innovation was absolutely necessary here. I will just run through in this particular context what all happened. So, the DRDO has a concept of development partners. So, in this case it became software development partners for the industry. Okay. So, what we did was that to call them extended development team, so that there is a oneness. Because our scientists were telling that if they are doing them, why are we here for type of a thing. Anyways, that usual problems. Now, this we took it, take it as a challenge. The entire requirements capture, design, implementation will be done through the industry only, notwithstanding this. The role the development team in DRDO would play would actually more like a firewall. That is, the problem at the industry end was, if we are not scholars about the business logic, but at least we were literate. When they came to industry, they won't distinguish between a general and a Subedar major. They won't distinguish between a corps and a battalion. Under that condition, to be able to capture effectively, they would lose the confidence if you put this industry directly in front of the user. So, that particular intermediate role we played, and then sat with this particular industry, and then started capturing and things like that. Because this particular thing is not codified sufficiently, we decided to dump that particular what is known as waterfall model, where you freeze the requirement and then write the software. We went for an iterative development. Capture something, build something, show it to them, they will say, yeah, take 9, take care, this also is required. So, it was brought into an iterative development mode. So, these are all innovations at those particular time. Now, I think iterative development is accepted, but those days it was a conceptually new. So, this is how that particular one set of one version of software, it is integrated in the meanwhile second version is being built, and so on and so forth. The whole thing had to manage. Management wise it was horrendous, but then that was the only way we could push the project across. Then we had so much time and effort in the artillery to make the equipment rugged. You could see they were all solid looking stuff. But by the time we came, we decided to focus on off-the-shelf computers and things like that, but put them in air-conditioned shelters, put the shock absorbers and things like that, so you carry on. Otherwise, this obsolescence cycle would have hit it very badly. And at the higher echelons, some of the comforts were possible, vehicle, shelters, air conditioning and all that. One last point of related innovation I would like to mention is related to the way the DRDO has been dovetailing with the industry. As I was telling, DRDO is an R&D organization. I do a damn successful development, then what? Somebody has to pick up the weapon and produce it in numbers and give it to the users and support. This particular thing was always with a mechanism called transfer of technology. So, the DRDO would do a lab prototype, initial model called the A model, a little more robust engineered model which can take to the field for trials and things like that, called a B model. If that is successful, then we will do a transfer of technology to the industry, and they would take on the baton from them as a theory. In practice, this transfer of technology was always a problem, because the industry and the scientists don't talk the same language. Typically, the industry in those days particularly were more or less streamlined to doing license production. So, when they are doing a tie-up with a foreign company for license production, all neat drawings and every detail attended to is available. All they have to do is there. Whereas here, something which you have put up in this thing, we have to convert artificially into documentation, which is understandable and putable into the production line. So that was always a disconnect and a lot of finger pointing and things like that. More than that, time is to be lost considerably. So what one of the labs did, which I found interesting by that time I had moved to Delhi as chief controller, the one radar lab, somehow over time they had got into a mode where because of the mutual comfort and credibility of Bharat Electronics side and the lab side, they would do a paper design and then sit with the production agency and get the initial prototype itself done by the production agency, for which they would compensate. The lab would compensate. So this was very much a win-win, because in that process, all the necessary drawings and process would get generated in the production agency without having to separately do a transfer of technology. So that was a major turning point. I liked it so much. Then I made it, at least in my set of laboratories, as the way to go. Defense Electronics Application Lab in Dehradun was doing a new generation radio called software defined radio. There I insisted that they go for a model like this, and today it is a very successful, where the entire hardware against the paper design for a deal was developed by BEL and then made available. In the meanwhile, they concentrated on software, ported the software, and then the radio is ready in much faster time than it would have been, and this DOT bottleneck was removed. So now I will conclude. In all this interaction with the development team, the users, and bringing in some innovation and pushing and things like that, I found one catalyst which worked is not that innovation or idea itself, but a high level of motivation and focus which was shown by the team. I think without that, you may have wonderful ideas, it will only remain with you. I think that was, they were prepared to put in long hours, personal sacrifices, because some of the things we did in the overall good of the project actually increased the burden in terms of effort and time and all that. They compensated by working sometimes 18 hours a day type of a thing. Amazing. So that made so much a difference. The other one is, I think if you're talking about innovation, innovation requires an ecosystem to flourish. Without that, it is just some sort of a lip service. Technology development must happen in a very synchronized way. Institutional networking has to be there. The management push has to be there, and other things. So unless that ecosystem is there, innovation cannot flourish. As I was preparing for this particular talk, I happened to read a small book by one fellow called Gaynor, Doing Innovation, Creating Economic Value. A very small monograph type of a thing. But I like what he says. Ultimately, for innovation, there should be a culture that fosters innovation. Find the right people. It is not always possible in our government setup to find the right people, but at least you have to find a few right people who can move it along. Provide the freedom to act, absolutely necessary. Many of the things were actually making the management nervous, but they went along, saying that, okay, if you say so, let us see, type of a thing. Implement effective and supporting management practices. I talked about the importance of management. Provide organized resource structure, and provide organization attitude that focus and achieve their goals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Actually, we need innovation now, Gokul. So, as I invite you, I'll keep it very brief. Our friend Gokul from Erwan Consulting. Now, sir, we have clubbed the Q&A session. First, Gokul will speak, and then we'll have joined. Over to Gokul, please.
Good evening. One of the things has been to deal with challenges put in front of you. So I think today is a So I'm told that I have exactly 24 minutes to talk to you, so I had a lot of things I thought I could share insights about. But by the way, I must mention that for a long time in my life, I had been a great admirer of looking at the stars. There's something extremely fascinating about them. But of late, one of my biggest regret has been that I never been able to do that thanks to the enough sufficient light pollution in the cities. But I must say that today I got a fantastic view of the universe and the sky of a different kind, because sitting on to my left was Mr. Sitara, who seems to be a sun and who has radiated fantastic things behind the scenes and for keeping us Indians safe. So thank you so much for that. And on the other side of me was nothing less than Professor Preetham, who has, I'm sure, as a son, illuminated a lot of minds. And sitting in front of me were rising stars. So I had a fantastic view of the universe today, I must say. Given that I have 24 minutes, I have an option of asking you what would be a fantastic takeaway for you. Would it be one of seeing an organization where innovation has actually happened and where it has been happening in a repetitive manner? Would that be a need that would fulfill for you? Or would you rather like to know about innovation from a global perspective? So if you help me out with that, because I need you to be partners in crime so that I can close the session at 5 o'clock today. I was more concerned about, so I can go ahead with my flow? Fantastic then. Was it wrong? So, before I begin, anyone has watched this movie, The Three Little Pigs? Let me start, instead of, let me just start by sharing this story. This was one of the most successful animation movies ever. And for your information, this was one of the first innovation movies, animation movies, if I might say. So what was great about this, this was like a 12-minute animation movie, and to the famous story which I'm sure we all were told as kids and which we have told our kids or have seen, it's about the Three Little Pigs. A fantastic movie by Walt Disney, and needless to say, it was an amazing success, right? Walt Disney made lots of money doing it. So naturally now the team has had a great success and they came back, and now they naturally want to do the next big success story. So what do you think was the next big success story? It's a movie. The first movie was about the pigs. It was hugely successful. Now they have to create the second movie. What do you think would have been the second movie? Sorry? At that time, yeah. More pigs, yes. So the team created Pigs Part 2, right? And naturally the expectation from the team is this is going to be a phenomenal success, right? And it bombed in the box office. Now the team was really running helter-skelter because the first pig was a fantastic success and the second pig unfortunately flopped. So like any other team, they came back to the drawing board, diligently trying to understand what went wrong. And you know what was the fantastic conclusion they came to? People love pigs. We executed it wrong. And then they came the next part, Pigs Part 3, with better execution. Again it flopped. And Pigs Part 4, again it flopped, to the extent when Walt Disney was bankrupt. And now he's a very worried man, and one fine day he was taking a walk in the park, and that's when he realized a moment of aha hit him. The aha that hit him was, you can't beat pigs with pigs. I'm repeating it again. You can't beat pigs with pigs. For the success, to break the success of an existing pig, another pig cannot help in the endeavor. It needs something fundamentally different. It calls for a Snow White. And an outcome of that was Snow White, which was the first full-length animation movie and went on to become one of the most successful feature films in the history, and one amongst the top 100 Now, the reason why I started with this story is innovation, in my humble opinion, and with whatever experience I bring from the organization that I represent, is essentially about creating those Snow Whites. The challenge in front of us as leaders is how do we create more and more Snow Whites that really stand out, right? So let me give you an example of pigs today we see right in front of our eyes today. This is a photo from a supermarket aisle. Are you able to see pigs? Now, don't genuinely look for a pig because, I mean, look at this. There are a dozen different soaps which are put out there, but essentially another soap. There are a dozen different body washes out there, yet another body wash, right? But everyone is fighting and trying to compete, saying that, no, if you look at the back of the soap pack, it is TFM is 74.1. His TFM is only 74.3. Or sorry, 73.3, whereas mine is 74.1, right? So invariably the competition in the space of innovation becomes who is creating the better pig. My pig is, essentially the competition in the race of innovation becomes, unfortunately, is it a smaller pig? I have a leaner pig, I have a bigger pig, I have a better pig, right? And we invariably see this happening in the organizations, right? And people hire for diversity. One of the ways in which we find organizations trying to break with this pigginess, if I might use the word, not in a derogatory word, but using it in the way Walt Disney saw it, was let's bring in more diversity into the organization. Now, what invariably happens is that the moment the guy from a different background comes in and asks the question, what do you think would be the response? Asks a question or poses an idea, what do you think would be a typical response? Sorry? It will not work out. We have tried all this in the past, it will not work out. The intent of bringing the diversity is more from the perspective of so that we have more Snow White thinking, but invariably, what a person we found quickly learns in an organization is what questions not to ask and what questions to ask, right? So I think beyond a point in time, if you notice, it's pretty much the same people who are moving from industry to industry, and over a point in time, even people start looking the same. I think today the reality is in the space of innovation, if I might pose the question is, how do we, as leaders, what is the opportunity to break this pig factory and start creating Snow Whites by design? And with that respect, I wanted to speak about what does it take to democratize innovation, right? And I'm more sharing insights from ground zero of where it has happened, and I hope I'll be able to provide some unique perspectives for you. So I've come from this organization called Airborne. Any guesses what Airborne means? So he's visually showing it. It's the reverse of nowhere. On the reverse of nowhere is Airborne. It's a happy accident that happened for us, and it can also be now here. Right? Nowhere is typically a state of helplessness or maintaining status quo where things are as is, where things are the same. Whereas now here is a completely different spirit. It's about one taking charge and making the impossible happen. So our endeavor as an organization over the last good 2.5 decades has been how to take teams, organizations, individuals across geography from a state of nowhere to a state of now here through innovation. So it is that insights that I'm sharing with you. Though we are proudly a patriotic firm. You know, in fact, our whole thought started with the thing that innovation strategy was a west to east concept, right? And innovation was also becoming a west to east concept. So how do we reverse the thought process and how do we give an innovation thought process from India to the world? That's what we have managed to do. And though we are an Indian firm based out of Bangalore, our clients are across the world. We worked with Unilever to create their first ever disruptive innovation team in the entire world. We have worked with Johnson & Johnson in South America to reinvigorate and pretty much flip the business model that they have been operating upon. So the reason why I'm sharing with this is I am more sharing from the ground reality of what I see as organizations doing. Just examine with me, what is your perspective when you see a map like this? Your perspective. How do you feel? My question is again, how do you feel? You feel upside down? You feel upside down. Any other thoughts? Okay, let me put it this way. If I were to give this map to you, what would be your immediate tendency? Flip it and reverse it. Why is that? You know, map, absolutely. Map was essentially supposed to be a representation of information, right? Over a period of time, if you notice, map itself has become a mindset. The way we look at map has become a mindset. To the extent that today, if I go to a 5th standard kid and if I give this map, the tendency is to immediately dismiss it and turn it around. Now, he will be all the more confused because now when he turns it around, the letters go upside down. Actually, this is not a fictional map. This is an actual scientific representation of a map, which we picked up from a textbook in Australia. And what the person said was, no apologies are called for in presenting the map with south at the top. After 100 years of development, the southern lands have no reason to be under the northern lands. We love the spirit of it for the only reason that this is pretty much the spirit of questioning and challenging something that has been taken for granted for several years, is what, in our experience, we find as the fundamental trait of making an innovation happen, right? Let me share some examples with you. This is a village from a southern Indian state. Any guess what this particular building is? Or something is going on. Any guess what this particular building is? The shelter here. Take a wild guess with me. Sorry? It's a school. It's a storage area. It's a residence of a family, village family. This is the village clinic, the village hospital. The reason why I deliberately put this picture is because we all have, as people who have been living in cities and used to a particular way of life, it's very hard for us to visually imagine what it means to have a hospital in a village. Now let's assume for a minute, and my dear sir, what you said, this is a residence, by the way. And this is the clinic. And sitting here is not a doctor, sitting here is a compounder who had worked for, say, 10 years or 20 years under a physician in a town and who has come back and now is a perceived de facto doctor for the people. And I'm sure that we all would have seen it. Sorry? It's very common, yes. And I'm sure we all would have experienced that, right? You go to the village hospital, any disease can be treated by a combination of 3 color tablets. I don't know if you've experienced it. So starting whether it's a stomach upset or whether it's a headache, it's essentially the color of the tablets. You don't even know the tablet name because it's that much more difficult to give a tablet name and the prescription, right? So this is the orange color round tablet. You take once in the morning and then the other tablet you break into half and you take one in the night. This is the reality today. Now let's assume for a minute a guy here, a gentleman living here, an elderly gentleman suffers heart attack. Now what I'm sharing with you is a real story. When I say suffers heart attack, he's not sure yet. No one in the family is sure yet, or for that matter, no one in the village is sure yet. Now, we all know that the moment a heart attack strikes, the first thing that we have to do is to take a quick ECG test, right? Now, what does it take? And I'm sure we all know that the first hour after a heart attack is a golden hour. Now, what does it take in reality for this gentleman to go and get an ECG test done just for him to ascertain if I am having a heart attack? What does it take? Let's examine. A, this gentleman has to call any of his friends and they make desperate phone calls, thanks to mobile phone today, to find someone who is working in a faraway field who has a two-wheeler. Now, it takes 45 minutes to 1 hour for him to reach his house. And he sits as a pillion rider, and there's one more guy who sits in the back and pretty much providing the support, and they have to travel 1.5 hours to the nearest bus stop. Now, the bus stop in the villages have their own frequency, so they have to wait another 1.5 hours for the bus to come. Then they get in. A 2-hour ride to a nearby town. Now he has gotten off the bus. Now he doesn't know where he needs to go, which hospital he needs to go to. So finally, somehow the mother, when he manages to go to the hospital to get the ECG test done, in reality it is 6 hours. Now, is this something unique? No, this has been a situation which has been prevalent in this country for a good period of time, right? And now the people who are making the ECG machine, let's come to the other side. This is the market situation. This is the reality. Like Mr. Sitaraman said, this is the user condition, if I might say, right? Now the reality is, they need ECG machines in the village. Now what does it take to make ECG machines? Let's look at the ECG machine manufacturers. Where is their innovation quotient lying in? Everyone is focused on creating the next better technology of the ECG mission, the next advanced technology, the more advanced graphing methods. That's what everyone is focused on. Till such time, a team from GE India, very much sitting in Jack Welch Technology Center, completely questioned this logic, and for the first time created the world's first ultra-portable ECG mission. Sorry? Yes, exactly. And interestingly, just for us to visualize, this mission is slightly larger than a landline phone, but smaller significantly than a laptop. Right? The world's first ultra-portable mission, which is battery operated, doesn't require a power source. Right? One charge, it can do 500 ECG tests. And what is the cost? A normal ECG machine was costing somewhere around $25,000, whereas this ECG machine was costing just $1,000. And their latest ECG machine, the Mac India, costs only $500, but is capable of doing double the number of ECG tests. In one charge, it can do close to 1,000 tests. The reason why I'm sharing it with you is I'm sharing with you as an example of a product innovation. But however you notice, the reality is not just the product here. What is the actual impact it is creating on the ground, right? The way they designed this ECG machine was such that it had no complex interfaces, just one-touch intuitive operation, right? So what that pretty much meant was a doctor or an expertise was not needed to take on or administer an ECG test anymore. A postman could administer the ECG test. All it called for was each village having one ECG machine, right? And the cost of ECG test was 180 rupees in the nearby town, whereas the cost of ECG test in this mission was just 7 rupees. And at the time of need, the patient is not going in search of the ECG test. The ECG test comes right to the patient, right? Just some facts for us there. And by the way, after the ECG test is taken, still we need a confirmation whether it's a good ECG or a bad ECG, right? What is the condition of the heart inside? Their latest version is such that it gives a simple indication whether it is normal or whether it's abnormal or whether it's emergency. So that the moment of decision, that person can take a decision whether he needs to go to the hospital or not, or whether it's just a gastric problem, which is a common mistake that people make, right? An example of a product innovation. And this is a real picture of the test coming right up to the door, right? And by the way, I'm sure many of us know, this is what gave birth to the whole concept of blowback innovation or the reverse innovation, which is the whole tendency of take from the West, strip apart the features, and give it to India. This completely flipped it. By no means it was not a poor technology. It was in fact the most advanced technology. It called for breaking the barriers of technology much more than creating just the next bigger version of an ECG machine. Let me move on. I'm sure you might have heard of Aravind Eye Care Hospital and the impact it has created, right? 240 surgeries is the benchmark in the world. 240 surgeries is the number of surgeries that can be done by an eye doctor at any given point in time or for a given year. Let's say he's an exceptional doctor, he can do 400 surgeries. But each doctor in Aravind Eye Care Hospital does 2,600 surgeries per year. That you're talking about 10 times the global average. 10 times not the global average, 10 times more than in fact the global benchmark. A process innovation made it happen. Because Dr. V, who was the founder of the Aravind Eye Care Hospital, his whole aspiration was to eliminate the needless blindness, that is the cataract and glaucoma in this country. By the way, it's only incidental. This example also happens to be from the healthcare space. It's not by design. What he created was pretty much an assembly line for making surgeries. So doctor, it's not an operation theater, it's an operation hall where the patient comes in front of the doctor. There are a series of doctors standing. The first surgery is happening. When the first surgery is happening, the second patient is wheeled in and kept behind, and he's prepared for the surgery. The doctor had to focus only on his core job of removing the natural lens and fit in the artificial lens, right? When he is finished with the first surgery, he just has to turn back, and the second patient is waiting for the surgery, and then the third, and then the fourth, because naturally the perception that comes to our mind, if I were to just do a wild imagination, 2,600 surgeries per year, it pretty much means the doctor would not even be going home to eat, right? Someone must be feeding him in the mouth. No, the doctors work only from 7 o'clock to 1 o'clock. But still they have managed to create a 10x impact in the global productivity. 70% of the patients are, look at this interesting part, 70% of the patients are treated free of cost, and only 30% of the people pay money, which pretty much means it has to be running a negative profit, right? I mean, imagine I am Ford, I'm giving 70% of my produced cars free of cost. Would I be making a profit? But still, Aravind Eye Care has a profit margin of 40%. A business model innovation. Now, somewhere down the line when Dr. V was doing this, by the way, he realized one interesting thing, that given the rate at which ophthalmologists are being pumped from the academia, from the medical colleges, and the rate at which the demand for eye care is going up, how much time would it take to solve this problem of needless blindness? 100 years. 100 years was the actual calculation that was done. Given the rate at which, assume all the doctors come and work at Aravind Eye Care. Assume all the patients come to Aravind Eye Care, which means it's a unified single point system, right? With that 100% efficiency and no distraction, it used to take 100 years, is what he calculated. Which is why he realized it calls for a disruptive way in which the doctors do the surgery. And also what he realized was IOLs manufactured, which is the intraocular lenses, right? Manufactured by the doctor, manufactured by the companies which are imported into India, a pair of IOL cost close to $100. And Aravind couldn't afford it. So they realized they didn't have any choice but to make a fantastic quality, low-cost IOL. But the interesting thing is, one of us were talking about the partnerships, right? Dr. Sitaram was talking about partnerships. It's not that easy to get a partnership. It's a very noble cause. They went from post to pillar across the world, at least asking one company to share your license with me. I will make it happen. I'll produce it. I'll share the profit with you. No one was willing. Till such time you understand a group of doctors who have absolutely no capability or understanding of what it takes to manufacture a lens and with what quality it has to be manufactured. What is a manufacturing process that has to be deployed in place, which pretty much meant they had absolutely no capability, managed to create an IOL for just $8 US. The reason why I'm sharing this is, what is the trait of a great innovation leader or an orbit shifting innovator, as we call it, is they don't work capability forward. What guides them is not my current capability, my current comfort. The only single point of their North Star, what guides them and puts them back on road, or the passion to deal with the partners who are so difficult, the passion to deal with timelines, is essentially the purpose at hand. What am I signed up for? That's an extremely important trait. And as leaders, I invite us to reflect. What is our North Star? When we go back in our own individual capacities, what is the North Star for us? I think that's what my invitation and reflection to you would be. And another one, I hope you have heard of Tutor Vista. Tutor Vista is a whole concept where what they realized was in US there was a lot of demand for tutors, good quality tutors. But they didn't have, but the tutors were costly and the tutors were not available. Whereas what they found was in India, this is an Indian firm, in India there are plenty of these educated bachelor degree women who are homemakers, but who have a good time who have a free time from say 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock till the child comes back. So they saw a powerful opportunity. Here is a need, here is a resource available which is under leveraged. Can we tie them? And that's what they created, which is an on-demand tutoring system for any student across the world. And what is the price? Yeah. And what is the price that we are looking at? The price we are essentially looking at is, in US it is $40 per hour. With Tutor Vista it is $25 per month. And this is a real story that classrooms in the US were run by tutors from India, from their household, as is visible here, right? So the message that I would like to leave for you is, the question is, behind all these three innovations, I'm just sharing a point of view with you here, the way we have seen it. The trigger for innovation can either be problem-led or opportunity-led. The problem-led or opportunity-led is what typically triggers innovation, right? The most convenient thing is to take it up when a crisis comes, right? But however, there is also an equal powerful opportunity, which is to be proactively uncovering new opportunities to make innovation happen. So that way, if you notice, what can happen is, if it is problem and incremental, if it is a problem-led innovation, and if it gives an incremental impact, what typically comes out is a quick fix, the typical jugaad, on-the-fly thinking, do something quick and dirty to fix the problem. On the other hand, this glorious space of continuous improvement, right, which is opportunity-led, it is proactive, but it gives up incremental impact. There, the nature of the innovation or the scope of innovation is one with the intention of a continuous improvement, right? Now, what happens if you notice the overall intent, if the focus is on these two zones, is to maintain the orbit? You know, where the intent is to improve, reform, continuously improve so that an organization or a team or a business is able to maintain its orbit. On the other hand, let me open up the top for you now. On the other hand, it can be one of a quantum impact, right, where it is about transformative solutions and game-changing leaps. For example, do you all remember this campaign, Nothing Official About It, from Pepsi? Do we know the story behind it? Coke was the official sponsor for the 1996 World Cup. It was the battle of the two fiercest enemies on planet Earth, Coke and Pepsi. It was 1996 World Cup. The question was, who is able to win the sponsorship and saturate the market? And unfortunately, Coke won. Now, Pepsi was in the state of a victim, right? And that's a fundamental shift in the difference that I would like you to see. Instead of seeing it as a problem, they ask themselves, what is the opportunity that we can capitalize on here? Whenever there's a problem that face, what we find that typically makes orbit shifting leaders stand out is whether I see a problem and surrender to it, or whether I'm able to convert it into an opportunity. Whether I get limited by constraints, or do I am able to see the possibilities behind those constraints. That's exactly what they did. What they said was, you know what, the stadium is there. I can't enter into the stadium because Coke is the official sponsor. Is the stadium larger or the city outside larger? So, at a fraction of the cost that Coke spent in winning that 1996 sponsorship, Pepsi spent a fraction of the cost and came up with this fantastic campaign, Nothing Official About It. And that was the time when Gen Y was actually booming into the country, right? So their whole philosophy was, the target audience here was youth. Their whole philosophy was, challenge the establishment. No one remembers Coke was the official sponsor, but everyone remembers Pepsi, Nothing Official About It. An example where, if you notice, it was a problem. It was a crisis. Now, at a crisis, the team can have an option of coming up with a quick fix which creates an incremental improvement, where the thinking could have very well been, how do I defend and ensure that at least my sales are not coming down, as against coming up with a transformative solution which creates a quantum impact. On the other hand, what could be a game-changing leap? In your mind, what is a game-changing leap? Any example of a game-changing leap that you're able to see? Drinking water, the packaging, available in bottles. Anything else? A game-changing leap? Touch phone is a game-changing leap. What do you think about Tata Nano? Is it a game-changing leap? No. Why? Okay, price shot up. Anything else? Why do you see it as not a great innovation? But if I were to think from the perspective of technologist, Mr. Sitaram, if I might just take a minute of your attention. In your opinion, is Tata Nano as a product an innovation or not? In your opinion, Tata Nano as a product is an innovation or not? I think it is an innovation. Huh? It is an innovation. No, I mean, we have a distinguished technologist here, so let's take his perspective because that will be very powerful to understand. It was an innovation, but if you notice what Dr. Sitaram was telling a while earlier, what failed was the complementary innovation. It was a brand new product, but unfortunately taken to the market with the old mindset. What I had was a Snow White, but when I took it to the market, I took it with unfortunately with the thinking of marketing a pig. So yeah, essentially what happened was, it was perceived as a poor man's car. There was no marketing innovation that happened. There was no supply chain or a business model innovation that happened. So innovation for us is, it's not about coming up with one thing, but coming up with a complementary thing for it to create an impact. Absolutely. Now, no one wants to have, Nano is meant for you to upgrade your car, but we don't want to have a car which pretty much says, you know what, I'm a poor man, right? By the way, day before yesterday, I just saw a car. I'll just close with that. Please. I'll just close with this statement, sir. Please.
Nano failed, it was product innovation, but marketing was very strict.
Yes, yes.
Nobody is allowed to buy cheap car. So they said what? Cheap car. No, I will make you only one point. That along with the product innovation, in marketing innovation and branding and innovation is still involved. So Nano failed not as a product. Nano failed in the absence of marketing. Nobody would like to buy cheap car. Am I right or not?
Right.
So the way they said cheap car. No. I don't want to be seen as a cheap car. I'll give you the point which is saying. No, but never cheap car. Never marketed like a cheap car. Never cheap car.
Yesterday,
800. So please understand that I would like to say that in the real life situation, what he's talking about, people. Not market acceptability. So people don't buy the product for use. People buy the product for the image. Are you getting my point on it? You don't buy Mercedes as a car for what? Maruti 800 can be equally good, am I right or not? In terms of speed. But people buy for what? Status. So please remember one thing, that Nano failed because it became a very poor man's status car. And nobody would like to publicly show that I'm a poor man. Are you getting me or not? So that's.
by the way, yesterday, I was just telling that day before yesterday in the Marthali traffic, I saw a Nano going in front of me, and this person has taken pains to take a printout and stick it behind the windshield. And what it said was, my other car is a Mercedes. I think I'll just take 1 minute, sir.
1 minute, I see the
So, I actually wanted to share a lot of insights with you on, I was just getting started, and I also wanted to show a real example of how an organization has actually democratized innovation successfully. But in absence of time, I mean, I'll be more than happy to connect with you offline. If you would like to understand anything, I'd be more than privileged to spend the time, even if it means staying here till 12 o'clock. With that, I really thank you, Professor and Doctor. Thank you. After the Q&A. No, more formally closing my presentation. So thank you so much. My last invitation, and I place this as a very humble invitation. As leaders, it's a fantastic opportunity for us to examine what is the legacy that we want to leave behind. Right? What is the actual legacy we want to leave behind? I was just talking to one of the other leaders in a FMCG firm, and he said, you know what, in hindsight, the legacy that I left behind is moving a 350 crore brand to a 500 brand, which anyways would have happened. The legacy, the most powerful legacy that we can ever leave behind is to unleash Snow Whites in our capacity as leaders, is to make those orbit shifts happen. Ones that make the impossible happen, ones that really stand out and emerge as a Snow White. That's what is a powerful legacy and an opportunity in front of us, not just for us as leaders, but making the people below us do it. Then we would have truly democratized innovation. With that thought, I'll close, and thank you for being patient and listening to me. Thank you.
I think that you can be very ruthless in suiting us, and we have got about 15 minutes. Though we are behind the schedule, we promised to finish at 5 o'clock, or complete at 5 o'clock, not finish. So complete at 5 o'clock, but I think that about 15 minutes, 1 or 2 questions. 2 questions? Only 2 questions, yes. use mic in a louder fashion because he has got something, you know that. So that, so नजदीक आकर बोलो ना.
No, I just wanted to know that design thinking that it has come. So how will that probably connect the larger number of people in creating those innovations? Can you throw some light on that?
No, I think what, can I say?
Sure.
I assume that you.
No.
I think what design thinking of late, it's a very fantastic time to observe that it is picking up in India, though we were kind of late to catch up with China on the design thinking because China has evolved a lot on that front. Design thinking, essentially the whole philosophy is what Dr. Sitaram very passionately spoke about, which is thinking with the user in mind. Right? It is essentially about observing the user in action. And I happen to hear firsthand from a lot of experts and authorities of design thinking who have pretty much stayed and worked as a chef in McDonald's to understand what is the life of a chef. If I have to design a product for a chef, I just can't intellectually just stand there and observe. I have to emotively feel what is the pain that I feel in cutting it. And keeping him in the center, designing a solution that is human-centric, the user-centric, I think that's what is a power that I see. My take on that is it provides a new route to understand the user and thereby derive newer innovations. I see it's one of the newer enablers that we have in our system today, which I think can be powerfully capitalized upon, especially to understand the unstated, underserved, unserved needs of the customer and the user.
One more question. In fact, they all are very keen to have passport before they enter in the house, and today is the last day, so they would like to do some shopping around that. So I understand the problem. I think that what actually he has said, and both have very powerfully articulated, that co-partnership, or call it co-creation.
Yes.
The sustainability of the product, the uses of the product depend from the buyer's point of view. In fact, when we are working in the committee, I think that whatever organization we create, that must serve the end users. And the end users are who? Armed forces. So that is what kind of concept he gave, that we are here not to create organization for our satisfaction, but we are here to create the organization which can help enable the end users. That one point which he made, and both have made very powerfully. The second thing that which he made, I think that innovation can't be individual centric. And he talked about the eco-centric. What is organizational eco or innovation eco in the organization? It's a very interesting point which he made. You know that some experiment was conducted by Harvard Business School about the ecosystem. So they put actually a platform and they put actually on the rope and put the bananas. So bananas were hanging, okay? And they put chimpanzees because they are very fond of bananas. And the rule was that the moment they jump to pluck the bananas, barrage of water should be thrown on chimpanzees. So chimpanzees, the moment they saw the bananas, you know that, and they started jumping. Whenever they used to jump, barrage of water used to be thrown. So a stage came when chimpanzees stopped jumping. So they replaced 3 more chimpanzees on that, and when they saw the bananas, so they started jumping. Other chimpanzees hold him. Are you getting my point? This is the culture, this is the ecosystem. And the point which he made, how many times he tried, tested, becoming sure that it will succeed. I would like to say one thing, innovation is nothing. It's a tenacious efforts to create differentiation. And the product sells because of differentiations. Remember, a research was conducted between Coke and Pepsi. And they found out no difference in taste. And they got the students and they said they couldn't differentiate whether it's a Coke or the Pepsi. Similarly, cigarettes. Those who are very heavy smokers, they were not in a position to differentiate which cigarette is what. It is the marketing that creates differentiation, friends. In the product innovation, it's the marketing that creates differentiation. So that's why I think that marketing is equally important. And the last point which I would like to say, this Bisleri, when it came, so Chauhan called me. And marketing people, how to market it. So all the people talked about the branding, positioning. So I said, Bhaiya, he asked me, Dr. Singh, you are keeping quiet. I said, I'm not a marketing man, but I can tell you only one thing. Be sure the quality of the water is good. He said, it's a great insight, that. Because it can work provided the product quality is good. When you are competing, the product quality becomes extremely important. I think that I would be requesting Babji to say a few words and then thank you, sir. Hello? Okay, hello? No, it's not working.
Thank you, sir. Both the lectures have been extremely thought-provoking, especially Dr. Jairam sir.
Sitaram sir.
Sitaram sir, he has shown us, even in the, what we perceive, most of us are from public sector, sir. What we perceive, that climate ecosystem for in a public sector, for innovation may be a little, there may be difficulties, but the way you have explained in a detail, how you handled all the segments who are very strong segments, those commanders, those war people, and the technical people, and software people, and you, with a lot of passion at the helm of affairs, it gave us a lot of confidence, sir. Thank you for that.
He started speaking the language of the brigadiers.
Yes, sir.
That was
Yes,
the most
that is the change
most-
management. Sir, business process re-engineering, the change management, there are so many things we got a lot of confidence because DRDO, if not equal, it may be more rigid than our public sector, sir. And we got confidence. Thank you very much, sir. And yours have been really thought-provoking, the thoughts, initial thoughts also. From failure, you have to pick up so many things that I think most of us are not doing that. So that is also a takeaway for us. And it is also touching our hearts, sir, because there is patriotism factor in that. When we saw the photos of soldiers, real or simulated, that scene, we felt that it is for the noble cause, not for any marketing. So thank you for a very, very nice presentation. Thank you very much, sir. And also coming to Mr. Gokul, thank you very much for going us from theory to practical. Sir, I suggest a book for all my friends, Dr. Prahalad Kakkad, I think. Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. I think you might have read. Most of our persons might have read it. That is a very good book where he talks about rural masses where there is a lot of fortune, not the rich people. So this Arvind case also was discussed in that. When he is also touched our hearts because that was touching the rural masses and cost leadership, which we discussed, sir. Dr. Saab has told us 5 pillars of strategy. Cost effectiveness is talked about, customer-centric, that usage, and all those things are really helpful. Provided if I had more time, Mr. Gokul might have given us more.
Walmart is a beautiful example. Walmart
Yes.
is a beautiful example.
And on behalf of our participants, I thank you very much for coming here once again. And thank our Guru sir and NHRD for bringing such eminent faculties here. Otherwise, the way... Thank you very much, sir. And I request Sri Kamal Singh, Director General, NHRD, to give away the memento. And please give us standing ovation.
Thank you everybody for the opportunity.
Thank you. Like to have photographs. Please come.